Hey everybody, welcome to the first inaugural At the Hive podcast. I'm David Starcer, aka Polo88 here, is what you'll know me as on the At the Hive website. And I'm joined in our first podcast by Nico Baguio, who also goes by, how do you say your handle here on the site here, Nico?
It's Nico Ewan.
Nico Ewan did some good stuff for us in the preseason as well. You did the Brian Anderson piece, didn't you?
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. It was really good stuff. Like I said, Brian Anderson, I think, proving he's going to be really good for us this year for the Hornets, definitely. Today, in our first podcast for the site this year, we're going to do a couple of things. Kind of go over a quick breeze over of the preseason recap, what we liked, what we didn't like. Hornets making a couple decisions on the young guys on the team and what options they're going to pick up and not. And then also, of course, the preview of the big game tomorrow, or I should say tonight, because this will probably go up on Halloween, of the Spurs on NBA TV, opening night at the Hive. I think I speak for all of us when I say we're excited for that one, so should be some good stuff.
The NBA is back.
I know, right? Oh my gosh, I mean, right now I'm watching the Lakers-Mavericks. Dallas looks bad, and they're winning by 14, so I don't even know what's going on. I mean, the Lakers are just not looking good.
It's the Dwight Howard effect.
Yeah, right? Oh my gosh. But speaking of the Hornets, let's get to it. Nico, I guess my first question for you, man, is what were your thoughts on the preseason? Who do you think had a good preseason, who didn't, or what were your thoughts on the 8 games that they played?
I personally thought Brian Roberts had a good preseason.
You like Brian Roberts?
Brian Roberts.
What did you like about his play?
It was watching the games back. His game was very steady, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have any flash, or he wasn't really quick, but he was smart. He took the right shots, took the right passes, defended really well, even though he's very skinny. And I think he's earned a really good a spot for the backup position as a point guard.
You know, he had his moments. I'm personally don't think he's a guy who should play a lot of minutes. I even think 10, 15 minutes is probably as much as I want to see him play. I will say that compared to Vasquez, who, you know, I think everybody would say at this point, he's probably not a starting point guard in the NBA, but he's playing it on this team because Austin Rivers, 19 years old, 20 years old, he's still trying to learn the position, and the Hornets don't really have any other options. So I would say Grievous Vasquez is probably better suited as that backup role that he played last year, but he's kind of thrown in there, and he struggled. So I guess by comparison, Brian Roberts has looked a little smoother there at point guard. You know, the rookies had their moments, especially Anthony Davis. I don't know if you watched the Heat game, but he broke out in a big way in that Heat game and kind of showed us what he's capable of with a little bit of everything. I mean, he was not only did he have, of course, his dunking and showing off the athleticism, but he actually showed some good offensive game, aside from just dunking the basketball, which is always a good thing for a guy who's as young and raw as he is.
But the thing I noticed in that Miami game was that even though Anthony Davis didn't do well in terms of shot creation, because he forced a lot of jump shots.
He did.
I remember it. But the thing I noticed and the thing I'm most excited about was that even though all the sets that we ran for him didn't go well, he still had a huge effect on the game because of his energy and his athleticism and, just being Anthony Davis.
Just being Anthony Davis.
Changed a lot of shots and put back, I think, two missed shots. One by Ryan Anderson in the corner, another by Amino in the fast break, I think. And that's what excites me the most about that game. Anthony Davis showed us how he could affect the game on his rookie season.
He's definitely going to be something to watch, not just for the Hornets, but for the entire NBA this year. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The other guys on the team, and I think this is definitely an interesting point for Hornets fans. Like I said, I mentioned Vasquez. He struggled in the preseason. He looked like he was kind of forcing the issue a lot, had a lot of turnovers. But him and our two small forwards, Aminu and Xavier Henry, they all had their final player options due to be picked up by the team. The team had a deadline of Halloween, actually midnight on Halloween, to decide whether they wanted to pick those options up or let those guys become restricted free agents. And they decided to pick up Vasquez's option. Pretty much no-brainer because his salary is only going to be in the $2 million range next year. But they decided not to pick up the options for Henry and Aminu. Both those guys' options were going to be a little pricier, closer to $4 million. I thought that was the right call. I mean, Henry obviously has struggled since he's come into the NBA. And even in this past summer league and preseason with the Hornets, he's barely even seeing the court. Aminu, I think people were on the fence about, but aside from the Heat game, which he actually played decently, I thought, against Miami. But aside from that, I mean, Lance Thomas was starting over him. So I thought that was a good move from the Hornets to just kind of let those two guys go. And it doesn't mean that either one of them might not be on the team next year. It just means that the Hornets aren't willing to commit to them. Do you have feelings either way on either of those guys, or?
I think as of now, I find them. I agree with what the team decided that they didn't pick up the options of Al-Farouq Aminu and Xavier Henry only because it opens up a lot of options for the Hornets. Not because we are not committed to them as players. Because I think Al-Farouq Aminu has come a long way since coming to the Hornets a year ago from the Chris Paul trade. And Xavier Henry, we got him for cheap, like a conditional second-round pick, I think, from the Memphis Grizzlies. And I really like his game coming out of college. So, although his shooting hasn't translated, I think as an individual, both players still have some potential to show as role players for any team. But right now, not picking up their option was the best option because not only does it open up a lot of doors because we have more cap space next year, but we could actually resign them to a cheaper contract.
Exactly. I think that's the biggest point because you see guys of their caliber around the league signing for $1 or $2 million as opposed to $4, which is a big deal. I mean, like you said, Jason Smith.
Yeah.
I wrote about this earlier this week. Jason Smith was in the same situation a couple years ago. He had that breakout year for him with the Hornets. I mean, it wasn't a breakout year, a big breakout year, but for him it was his best season. And the Hornets didn't pick up his option, but what they did was re-sign him to a deal that was 3 years, which is good for Jason because it's the security of a 3-year contract. And it was, like you say, it was only for $2.5 million a season. So that's good for a backup power forward center for a team. So like you said, if Aminu has a good year, and even if the Hornets decide to go out and get a starting small forward, somebody who's going to be a legitimate starter, they could always bring back one of those guys to be the backup, just cheaper, like you said. So that's a good thing. Preseason's done. Everyone's licking their chops for the beginning of the regular season. I feel like everyone kind of, all the season previews were out of the way. Everyone was saying, okay, what teams are going to finish where, and in the Western Conference. I picked the Hornets to finish like 11th in the West, in my video preview for At the Hive. I thought Houston. After watching us play Houston in that second to last preseason game in which the Hornets lost, but neither team really played great. I liked some of the players on Houston, but I still thought that New Orleans was going to finish above them. And then Daryl Morey goes and trades for James Harden from Oklahoma City. So, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, this directly impacts New Orleans in a lot of ways. We'll get to the kind of future developments that it could have, and how that relates to the Hornets with their young core, financial wise. But just as of right now, what do you think this means for Houston this year?
I'm kind of on the fence on what to think about the James Harden trade, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've always believed that. I think Rowan made this a point back in one of his articles a year ago when he said that in order to be considered a superstar, you need to have a huge effect on both sides of the court, on the offense and on the defense. And right now, although James Harden's really, and I mean really, really good at the offensive side, I haven't seen and I mean any evidence that he could contribute in a great way on the defensive side, in the same way that Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, all the other superstars that we know.
True.
Heck, even Dirk Nowitzki shown that he could have he could contribute to the defensive side. So I think that's the biggest question for Houston. Although they've acquired under 25 All-Star talent, how can they nurture him to become a superstar? The superstar that they've always wanted and they've always searched for in the past 2 or 3 years since Yao Ming's retirement.
That's true. That's kind of been a thing for Houston. They've just been... Well, the thing is, that's the weird thing, though, is that they've been looking for a superstar, like you said, since the Yao Ming, Tracy McGrady days. And you feel bad for them because both those guys are just, kept getting hurt. But for the last couple of years, they've been kind of just stuck in the middle there. They had Kevin Martin and Luis Scola and some other guys in their team, and they were like good enough not to be horrible, but not good enough to be, a really solid playoff contender. They were always kind of in the mix for the last playoff spot, but they never really, did anything.
Yep.
Now, Daryl Morey ships all those guys out of town, like you said, just to get a superstar, and he gets James Harden. But now you're just looking at a really, really young team. You got Jeremy Lin, who's going to play next to James Harden, and I'm going to be honest, what I've seen of Jeremy Lin so far in Houston, I think it may have just been a mirage what we saw in New York. I hope not, because you always root for a guy like that, but he just kind of looks out of sorts sometimes. Jeremy Lin just out of control. Him and Grievous, oh my gosh, I mean, just in terms of NBA point guards, those two were kind of at the bottom of the barrel. But you have Jeremy Lin, you got him, then you have Asik, who they got from Chicago, you have Chandler Parsons, Terrence Jones. Do you think Houston would finish above New Orleans this year with all those young guys? Are New Orleans and Houston going to be pretty similar? Do you like one more than the other?
So let's agree on something first. The first 9 teams in the West are already set.
You think they're already set?
First 9. So it's OKC, some combination of OKC, LA Lakers, San Antonio Spurs, and Denver in the top 4.
Gotcha.
Whichever one gets a break. Like, for example, Dwight Howard gets injured, so
sure.
OKC goes up, San Antonio goes up, or
right.
something like that. And then the bottom 9 or bottom 10 is already set as well. So it's something between Clippers, Grizzlies, Jazz, Mavs, and I think for Golden State, I think.
Golden State, okay.
Yeah. So, and we have the bottom feeders. So, I think New Orleans, right now, will finish ahead of the Rockets, only because our team is already had a 1-month training camp, compared to the Houston Rockets that not only... they had a training camp, yes, but most of them weren't really focused because they didn't know when they'd stay, when they'd go. And almost 3 weeks after training camp opened, 4 of their guys were traded, 3 came in, and one of those is a very integral part of their starting lineup, I assume. It's James Harden. So with just 2 days of practice, and I think James Harden arrived 2 days ago or a day ago, and that's the only time he had to practice with his teammates. So personally, I find the Rockets, in terms of talent, almost equal to the Hornets, but because of chemistry issues and the other things that come into play in a season, like they have a lot of youngsters compared to us. Well,
we're pretty young too.
But we also have Gordon, we also have Ryan Anderson, we also have Robin Lopez, people who are veterans compared to theirs they're
so they're
right now
too young.
One of their oldest players is Lin and Asik, who's only been in the league for 2 seasons, I think. So I think that all of that combined makes us will help us finish.
So you still think, you still think that you got the Hornets over Houston? Okay. I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on that, because I've heard people say they think James Harden makes Houston a playoff team, and I kind of laughed at that. But I mean, I think they'll be better, and I think James Harden can actually be the best player on a team. I think he might struggle a little bit this year because he's kind of used to having that security blanket. A lot of people, and I think they're discounting James Harden when they say, oh, well, he gets all of his numbers against second units. I think it's being a little unfair because he does play in crunch time for him, or he did, I should say. So he has played against top-level talent. He's done it in the playoffs the last couple of years. Yeah. But I do agree, it is a different situation going from, the third best player on a team to now the guy. So I'm happy. I'm happy for Houston fans. And I guess this might make things a little bit trickier, for New Orleans, being that James Harden's now in our division. Like you said, I still like New Orleans more than Houston this year. I will say I hope Eric Gordon is healthy so that, those two will be fun to watch against each other, if nothing else, right? Wouldn't that be an epic matchup? Gordon versus...
I expect them to guard each other.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For sure. And I think that would settle who would actually be better than the other, because it's always been a topic that's jumbling through my mind. Who's better, Harden or Gordon?
We'll find out this year. we'll find out this year.
They're going to play 4 games against each other.
Mm-hmm. I'll write about and make a note of this, and when I finish my season preview, which also will be up today on at the Hive, there's a little tidbit for you. I'll definitely have those 4 dates circled on the calendar for everyone, so you know when to look out for those games. Now let's look at the big one, the game on Halloween against the Spurs. Like you just said when you kind of listing your contenders, San Antonio top 3 team, probably in the Western Conference this year. I still consider them a legitimate title contender myself. They won't have Manu Ginobili though. Eric Gordon is a maybe, but Manu is a definite no. So what are you looking for out of San Antonio for this game on opening night? Do you think how much is Manu not being there going to hurt them, or who are you looking for? Who are you worried about? I guess I should say for San Antonio.
I personally think against the Hornets, Ginobili won't matter that much because I really like their depth.
They are deep.
I can't say that their depth is just. Let's start with.
And they're young too. They have a lot of good young players.
Outside of them, Duncan and Ginobili, most of them are under 30
or
under 29.
And Tony Parker just turned 30, and he had his best season last year.
Yep. So I don't actually think that Manu missing the game will make the Hornets that game more winnable for us, because I think we'll probably lose.
So that's your prediction?
Sorry, Hornets fans, I'm just being realistic here, because I feel like Parker will torch Vasquez for 30 points.
Who else besides Tony Parker are you looking out for? I wonder if Monty's going to have Duncan on, Anthony Davis on Tim Duncan defensively, or if he's going to keep Robin Lopez on him. I would imagine you're going to see Lopez on Duncan, since Tim plays center now, but that's always going to be an interesting matchup. I saw there was actually a really funny quote today. Somebody, I'm assuming it was either from the San Antonio or the New Orleans press, asked Tim Duncan about Anthony Davis being the next Tim Duncan, and Tim Duncan said, "Hold on a second, I'm still me. I'm still the real Tim Duncan.
Let me be me.
Yeah, can I be me for at least a little while longer?" So I think Robin Lopez will be on him, but I think at least, I would imagine at least how many possessions we're going to see those two go at it. And the master might show the young kid a thing or two about offense, I think.
No, I think Monty Williams will start with Robin Lopez on Tim Duncan, because I feel like he'll start Lopez and Davis first.
Mm-hmm.
as much as I want him to start Anderson.
Who do you think are the Hornets to look out for in this one? I mean, you just mentioned Ryan Anderson. I gotta feel like well, there were a lot of reasons why the Hornets played well against Miami, but one of them I feel like is they're finally starting to click as a team. A lot of those games there wasn't a lot of movement without the ball. There wasn't a lot of ball movement. Vasquez or Rivers or one of those other guys would have the ball out on the wing with 5 seconds on the shot clock and have to force up a shot or drive in there. But there was actually a lot of good, that Heat game was a really fun game to watch for both teams.
Yes.
And
even though it was just a preseason.
Yeah, it did not feel like a preseason game. I remember writing that on the At the Hive live chat that it felt like a regular season game. And Mike Breen and Jeff Van Gundy, I think they called the game. They said it was the most competitive preseason game they had watched.
Yeah.
So but the Hornets, like I said, I think they're just starting to actually build that chemistry to know where each other are on the court. Ryan, there were a lot of plays there where Ryan Anderson would get a good look, or Grievous would take it to the hole and find somebody for an easy basket. And I think, like I said, the more these guys are going to play with each other, and then hopefully it'll just be funner to watch as a fan. Like you said, I agree that San Antonio, I'd probably pick them to win the game, but I just hope that it's an enjoyable game, if nothing else, because they've had some ugly games in the preseason. And I just hope that they kind of continue to build that chemistry and knowing where each other are and makes it moving and making good passes. And it would help if Eric Gordon played, of course. So I feel like that's the next big question.
Yeah, I think there was a report that I read on Twitter, like Gordon was going to play, but he'd probably be off the bench. So I think that throws off the whole idea of the how will Gordon affect the game, because he will have an effect on the game if he starts off the bench.
True, and I wonder, I'm guessing that whether he comes off the bench or starts, he's gonna have a minutes cap. Monty's going to say you're not playing more than 20 or 25 or whatever, however many minutes. So if it were you, I would personally rather see him start, because whenever they decide, okay, he's Eric Gordon, he's ready to go full time, he's gonna start. So even if they have a minutes cap on him, I feel like I'd rather see him start and have Austin come off the bench, because those are the roles they're going to play. Once everyone's at full health and ready to go. Or would you rather see Eric Gordon off the bench for the first game, or do you care either way?
People might find it weird, or not weird, but I think someone who's earned this spot in the starting 5 just for the first few games until Eric Gordon is ready is our second round pick in the 2012. It's Darius Miller.
Okay.
So we'd start a really, really tall team. A 6'6" point guard, a 6'8" shooting guard, a 6'9" small forward, a 6'10" with a 7'5" wingspan power forward, and a 7-footer.
That is a big lineup.
Center. So
I
think Darius Miller will fit right in the starting 5, in that starting 5, because he's played with them, he's trained with them, and until Eric Gordon is actually acclimated with the team, Darius Miller should start.
I'm not gonna completely argue with you. They did that in the Houston game where they started Miller alongside Lance. Well, it was Lance Thomas who started at the 3, but they did that. They started Miller, and I think Darius has been really impressive too. I'm not against Darius getting a start. The thing is, though, I don't think he's a shooting guard. I think he's when I see him out there and I see his game, I think he's a small forward. And I understand your point that he's earned the starting spot and that he can play out there if the Hornets want to throw out there a really big lineup. But for future considerations, for Darius Miller's sake, I think he's a 3. So with that being the case, I'm hoping he gets most of his minutes playing small forward and not shooting guard. If push came to shove, I would probably rather see somebody like a Roger Mason get the start. If Gordon was going to come off the bench, and I mean, we don't have to play Mason longer than 15 minutes. But I just see
Yeah.
Darius Miller as a small forward going forward in his career. But I totally see you. I totally feel you going with the big lineup, and that Darius has definitely looked really good, which is a good thing for New Orleans. You know, we talked about Aminu and Henry struggling. Neither of those guys had their options picked up. Miller has proven that he can kind of step in there and play for this team and hit an open shot, which Henry and Aminu have struggled doing. So, hey, if nothing else, we got another young guy who's proven he can play in the league. So I guess final prediction. What do you think the final score is going to be, and who do you think is going to be the big contributor for New Orleans?
I'm sorry. What's the last question again?
Oh, who do you think's gonna have a good game for New Orleans, and the final score prediction?
Based on the preseason, I'd say it's a low-scoring game. So
Low scoring, okay.
I'll predict 191 Spurs.
191 Spurs. And are you taking Davis having the player of the game for New Orleans? You going Ryan Anderson, somebody else maybe?
I'm gonna go Ryan Anderson just because I love him.
I know. I have a feeling that every Hornets fan loves Ryan Anderson, and that's a good thing. Being a big Peja fan from the past, I think he's a better version of Peja in a lot of ways. So, I'm definitely.
We have a younger Peja now.
I know. I hope they put his head on the stick and have the people run through the court like they had with Peja and Marco Bellinelli.
God.
That would
Ryan Anderson deserves something new.
Yeah, right. He deserves the fat head.
Deserves something new because people will just remember Peja with that.
I know.
He needs something new.
And you know what? And I forget who mentioned this, but it's a good point. Having a sharpshooter out there who can hit 6 threes in a game, that gets the crowd involved. If you have a guy it's always good to have a guy who can dunk the ball. The Blake Griffins of the world. Those guys are always going to get the crowd into a game, whether you have a good team or not. And obviously Anthony Davis. I'm assuming there's going to be a sold-out crowd because everyone wants to see Anthony Davis. But having a guy like Ryan Anderson, I'm telling you, it's an undervalued part of the team just from like a fan perspective. I feel like, don't you, having a guy who could make 8 threes at any given game?
Yep. I think that's the value of a 3-pointer is not only in the fact that it's a 3 points, but hitting 2 in a row as a team, which Ryan Anderson could definitely do, gets the crowd riled up.
I'm telling you, we haven't had it since Peja. Marco was a streaky guy. He could have nights. I living here in Denver, I try to go see him when they play the Nuggets as much as possible. And I remember one of the games last year, Marco actually led the team in scoring. But those games are so few and far between. He's just not the consistent threat that Ryan Anderson is.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a close game too. Like you, if push came to shove, I'd probably have to say the Spurs are gonna win, even without Manu. That Spurs team is still really good, and they've got a lot of young good guys on there. Like you said, the core is old, but they have a lot of good young guys on that team. So I wouldn't count them out even going forward the rest of this season. But like you also said, it's early in the season. Teams are working out their kinks. Last year the Hornets started out 3-0 before they went on their tailspin. Just tonight, Miami-Boston was a good game, but Boston almost came back and Dallas beat the Lakers. So crazy things happen. You never know.
Dwight Howard just went 3 of 14 from the line.
Oh God, it was. Let me tell you, for anyone who is watching this Dallas game and is listening to this podcast, Dallas, I feel like, did not play a great game. They may have shot a high percentage, but Darren Collison, he's not a great point guard, and he couldn't miss tonight, and Brendan Wright couldn't miss tonight, and somehow LA lost that game. I don't know how it happened, but. Any final thoughts, Nico, before we close out the first podcast? Anything else you want to talk about?
I had something in mind, but I'll just leave it up for the next podcast.
Sounds good, my man. Sounds good. So we're, unfortunately, both picking the Spurs to win, but I know we're both definitely going to be rooting for the Hornets. Should be a good one.
Really good one.
a 7 p.m. tip-off New Orleans time, which is 6 p.m. out here in the Mountain Time Zone. I don't know what time it is out there in the Philippines, but
It's probably 8 a.m.
8 a.m. So you'll be up bright and early tomorrow.
Yep.
Good
Following
deal.
the game on TV.
Good deal, man. And I know for sure we're going to try and do more of these. We'll have Rohan on here. Hopefully Ole. I know Nico will want to do more. We talk about more stuff. But I wanted to get the first one done before the big game tomorrow. I think, or today. Sorry, this is going up tomorrow. I keep forgetting. So, looking forward to it, Hornets fans. I know you guys are. And hopefully look forward to more podcasts here on At the Hive. Hopefully we'll come up with a name for it and everything. But I'm David with Nico saying goodbye. Thanks for listening, and go Hornets. Hornets Spurs from the Hive. We'll talk to you guys later.